You are so plain and cheap. My mother-in-law, who loves luxury, repeats this sarcastic comment every time she meets me. She says a woman like me is unworthy of being her son's wife. One day, my mother-in-law, who often mocks the inexpensive things I wear, poured wine on my dress. "Stop it, you cheap thing," she said. But later, she turned pale when she learned the truth. My name is Linda. I am a 31-year-old housewife. I married my husband John 3 years ago. We don't have children yet and are enjoying a carefree life. Our married life is peaceful and smooth, and we are even talking about having a baby soon. Despite my happiness, my relationship with my mother-in-law, Nancy, is not good. She has been critical of me since we got married, and even after 3 years, we still haven't built a good relationship. I try to get along with her, but she doesn't seem interested. When my son wanted to get married, I wondered what kind of young lady he would bring. "She's very plain," she said when we first met. From the beginning, she made it clear that she didn't think I was suitable for her son. My parents are normal working people. My father is an office worker, and my mother is a nurse. But my mother-in-law looked down on my family, saying, "I can't believe your mother has to work. They must have been very poor." She said this with a pitying look when she heard about my family. My mother-in-law, who has never worked since her marriage and grew up in a wealthy family, always brags about her luxurious upbringing. "I always wore nicer things than others," she said proudly. "Cheap things don't suit me. That's why I raised my son to know what is the best." My mother-in-law, who made fun of the cheap things I wear, once poured wine on the dress I was wearing. She called me a cheap thing and later turned pale when she learned the truth about my dress. This incident, along with many others, has made our relationship very strained. Despite my efforts to get along with her, my mother-in-law continues to criticize me. She often makes comments about my appearance and the way I dress, implying that I am not good enough for her son. She also criticizes my family, looking down on them because they are not as wealthy as she is. I have tried to ignore her comments and focus on my happy life with John. We have a loving and peaceful relationship, and we are looking forward to starting a family. But my mother-in-law's constant criticism is a source of stress and tension. I hope that one day my mother-in-law will see that I am a good wife for her son and accept me for who I am. Until then, I will continue to try to build a better relationship with her, despite the challenges. I didn't know how to react to my mother-in-law, so I always tried to cover it up with a smile. I like simple clothes and makeup, which is different from my mother-in-law, who likes fancy things. She always wears expensive brand clothes, accessories, and makeup. You don't know what good things are, do you? You only know about cheap stuff. I wonder why my son chose you. I raised him to know what is good. After boasting, she always puts me down. Since my husband and I got married, this has been our situation. One day, my mother-in-law poured wine on the dress I was wearing and called me a cheap thing. Later, she turned pale when she learned the truth about my dress. This incident, along with many others, has made our relationship very strained. Despite my efforts to get along with her, my mother-in-law continues to criticize me. She often makes comments about my appearance and the way I dress, implying that I am not good enough for her son. She also criticizes my family, looking down on them because they are not as wealthy as she is. Even though she's sarcastic when we meet, I don't mind too much because I can ignore it. My father-in-law and husband are kind to me, so I didn't feel the need to deal with her too much. There's also another person who welcomed me warmly, my grandmother-in-law, my husband's grandmother. She is over 81, but still healthy and not snobbish at all. My husband's parents have 2 houses on a large plot of land. They live in one, and the grandparents live in the other. Both houses are beautiful mansions. I was surprised when I first saw them. The land was cheap, and we had a carpenter who built them cheaply. "It's not that magnificent," my grandmother-in-law said with a laugh. Despite my mother-in-law's bragging, these houses are mainly due to my grandparents-in-law's hard work. My grandmother-in-law is very friendly and not snobbish, which helps me ignore my mother-in-law's comments. It feels like I have more grandchildren. "We don't have any female grandchildren in our family," my grandmother-in-law said, "and she loves me very much. I wish I could get along with my mother-in-law too, but it doesn't seem to work out that way. Still, I'm happy I have a good relationship with my grandmother-in-law. We go out for lunch or tea together. Despite my happiness, my relationship with my mother-in-law, Nancy, is not good. She has been critical of me since we got married, and even after 3 years, we still haven't built a good relationship. I try to get along with her, but she doesn't seem interested. When my son wanted to get married, I wondered what kind of young lady he would bring. She's very plain, she said when we first met. From the beginning, she made it clear that she didn't think I was suitable for her son. My parents are normal working people. My father is an office worker, and my mother is a nurse. But my mother-in-law looked down on my family, saying, "I can't believe your mother has to work. They must have been very poor." She said this with a pitying look when she heard about my family. One day, my mother-in-law called me. "It's my birthday next month. I've decided to have it at our house this year. Come and celebrate with my son." She invited me to her birthday party. I said I would definitely go. Let me tell you something. We're having a big party this year to celebrate my 61st birthday. All of our relatives and friends will be there. I'd appreciate it if you dress appropriately. My son will be fine, but you're not going to be dressed like you always are you? If you dress appropriately, my son will be fine, but I'll be embarrassed if you don't, my mother-in-law said before hanging up. What my mother-in-law meant by dress appropriately was probably her favorite top-notch brand name clothes. I was stumped because I didn't have those kinds of clothes. But when I talked to my husband about it, he told me not to worry, and we decided to dress a little more formally. The day of my mother-in-law's birthday came. The party was starting in the late afternoon, so my husband and I went to a department store in the morning to pick up a birthday gift for her. Since she loves luxurious things, we thought she'd be happy with something fancy. Also, she wouldn't complain if I told her my husband picked it out, so it was easier for us. After we finished picking out the gift, we had lunch together and went home to get ready. Then I received a call from my grandmother-in-law. "Come to my house now," she said. I explained that I was out and going home to change but would show up before the party. "Just come to my house dressed as you are," she insisted. Wondering if it was something urgent, I went to see her. I asked my husband to go home and get changed, and we planned to meet at my in-laws later. When I arrived at my grandmother-in-law's house, she invited me in with a laugh. She was laughing and telling me about my mother-in-law's party. It looks like a really huge party. Various things have been delivered to their house since this morning. From her house, I could see the entrance of my in-laws' house and noticed all kinds of vendors coming and going since the morning. I heard that a big flower arrangement had just arrived, showing how excited my mother-in-law was about the party. My grandmother-in-law said, "My daughter-in-law does a great job," and took me to the sitting room at the back of the house. The room had several large chests. She opened one and took something out. "Linda, you were told to dress properly today, weren't you? I'll give you my dress so you can wear it. This way she won't be able to complain," my grandmother-in-law said with a smile, holding out a beautiful, well-kept dress. It was her pride and joy. "It's a good dress. I don't wear it much anymore. It would be a shame to keep it put away. I thought this would be a good chance to give it to you, Linda," she said, also taking out accessories to match the dress. My grandmother-in-law had noticed my mother-in-law's comments and wanted me to look great so I wouldn't be blamed. I didn't know much about dresses, but from the way my grandmother-in-law talked, it must be really expensive. When she offered it to me, I was puzzled. "I can't accept such a thing. I'm sorry." "It's okay," she responded with a kind smile, pushing the dress towards me. "I know you will take good care of it. That's why I want to give it to you." Then she began to help me put on the dress. With her skilled hands, she had me dressed in no time. I hadn't worn a dress since my 23rd birthday. My grandmother-in-law laughed and said, "I see. I haven't worn a dress in a long time either. This is a good opportunity since it's a fancy party." While we talked about the party, I didn't realize she had finished dressing me. Then someone came to visit my grandmother-in-law. "I will have this person do your hair and makeup," she said. She had even called a hairdresser for today. My grandmother-in-law has been taking care of me for so long. She is my lovely granddaughter, she said. I have to make her look beautiful, my grandmother-in-law said. Thanks to her, I was glamorously dressed. She assured me that my mother-in-law would have no complaints. Just as I finished getting ready, my husband called to say he had arrived at my parents' house. I thanked my grandmother-in-law and decided to go see him. I'll be there as soon as I change my clothes, I said as my grandmother-in-law sent me off. When my husband saw me in the beautiful dress, he was surprised. We entered my in-laws' house together. The hall was already crowded with my mother-in-law's relatives, and the party had started. My mother-in-law, wearing a bright red dress, was sitting at the head of the table, smiling happily. "Happy birthday, mother-in-law," I said as I approached her and handed her the gift I had prepared. She looked me over from top to bottom, then took me out of the hall and into the kitchen. What a cheap dress. I told you to come properly dressed," she complained more rudely than usual, probably because she was drunk. The next moment, she splashed the wine she was holding onto my dress. The stain spread rapidly. It's because you forced yourself to wear a dress. Why don't you wear something with a pattern instead of such a plain one? You really have no taste. That's why I hate people from poor families," she continued, not caring about my distress. She told me to go home because she wouldn't allow me to attend the party in a cheap dress. "This is your mother's," I managed to mutter, shocked and sad. My grandmother-in-law had prepared everything with love, and now it was all ruined. "Whose mother? What are you talking about? Anyway, I don't want you here today. Just leave my son and go home," my mother-in-law demanded, trying to make me leave. At that moment, I heard my grandmother-in-law's voice behind me. "What's so cheap? Do you mean my dress?" I turned around, and there she was. She came to me as tears welled up in my eyes. "Oh my God, it's terrible," she said, looking at the stain on my dress. I was so sorry that all I could do was apologize to my grandmother-in-law. I lowered my head and softly said, "I'm sorry." My grandmother-in-law gently replied, "It's all right," and began dabbing at the wine stain with a handkerchief. My mother-in-law, watching this, sobered up and looked very pale. "If you do this, the stain won't spread. I'll use a stain remover to clean it," my grandmother-in-law said kindly. She then turned to my mother-in-law and asked, "Which dress do you mean by cheap?" This is one I had made a long time ago. It must have cost several $1,000s. The fabric and tailoring are first class, just like you love. My mother-in-law's eyes widened when she heard the price. I was also surprised to learn it was so expensive, even though I knew it was a good dress. My grandmother-in-law explained the value of the dress in a sarcastic tone, making it clear that my mother-in-law had ruined something very costly. "I'm sorry. I didn't think it was that expensive," my mother-in-law said, looking more upset than I was, struggling to find the right words. My grandmother-in-law continued, "How can someone who doesn't know the value of things make fun of others? You just show off with fancy things and brand names. You don't know what's really good. You're embarrassing." My mother-in-law, now completely sober, couldn't argue back and just looked down. "People who know quality understand. You, with your cheap dresses, don't get it. You're just new money with no taste." My grandmother-in-law's sarcasm mirrored the way my mother-in-law often spoke to me. My mother-in-law's face turned bright red with embarrassment, and she bit her lip in silence. Then my grandmother-in-law began lecturing her about her attitude toward me. "How can you snub a daughter-in-law who has come from another family?" she asked sternly. "Linda is part of our family now, and she deserves respect." I felt sorry for my mother-in-law, who looked like she was about to cry, and listened quietly as my grandmother-in-law continued. "You should be grateful to have such a kind and loving daughter-in-law. Instead, you make her feel unwelcome and unworthy. This behavior is unacceptable." My mother-in-law remained silent, her face showing a mix of shame and regret. I could see tears welling up in her eyes. My grandmother-in-law, seeing this, softened her tone a bit. "It's not too late to change. Start treating Linda with the respect she deserves. She's your son's wife and an important part of this family." With that, my grandmother-in-law turned to me and smiled. Now let's get you cleaned up and enjoy the rest of the party." She led me out of the kitchen, leaving my mother-in-law to reflect on her actions. As we rejoined the party, I felt a mix of relief and gratitude. My grandmother-in-law had stood up for me in a way I never expected. It was a turning point in my relationship with my mother-in-law, and I hoped it would lead to better understanding and respect in the future. I'll leave it at that. Linda and I won't be attending anymore. "Have a good time," my grandmother-in-law said after finishing her lecture to my mother-in-law. She let her go, and my mother-in-law, in her bright red dress that she had prepared with such enthusiasm, looked out of place and embarrassed. "Wait here. I have a change of clothes for you at home," my grandmother-in-law said to me. She went to get my clothes, and I changed back into them at her house. My husband also joined us. He seemed very angry when he heard the story from my grandmother-in-law. The four of us, my grandparents-in-law, my husband, and I, left my in-laws' house and went out to dinner together. We had a good time without worrying about my mother-in-law. The evening was pleasant, filled with laughter and good conversation, which helped me forget the earlier unpleasantness. After that night, my husband and grandmother-in-law, both still upset, lectured my mother-in-law again. They told her not to approach me and restricted her from spending money freely. My grandmother-in-law had insisted that my mother-in-law needed to learn modesty. My mother-in-law's face was so pale during these lectures that I felt a bit sorry for her, but I knew she needed to change her behavior. My grandmother-in-law further declared that she would give me all her dresses, jewelry, and other valuable things. "It doesn't make sense to let someone who doesn't know the value have them," she said, directing her words at my mother-in-law. Her sarcasm mirrored the way my mother-in-law often spoke to me. I had tried not to say much about it before, but it seems my grandmother-in-law had always disliked my mother-in-law's taste for luxury. Later, with a mischievous smile, my grandmother-in-law confessed to me, "I never liked how she flaunted her wealth. It was about time someone taught her a lesson." The dress that had been stained with wine was returned to me, perfectly cleaned. I was really happy and relieved. I still don't understand the quality of high-end things very well, but I have learned a lot from my grandmother-in-law, who accepted me warmly. In the weeks that followed, I noticed a slight change in my mother-in-law's behavior. She seemed more reserved and less critical. It wasn't a complete transformation, but it was a start. My husband and I continued to enjoy our time together, looking forward to the future. One afternoon, my grandmother-in-law invited me over for tea. As we sat in her cozy living room, she shared stories of her own experiences as a young woman. She talked about the challenges she faced and how she learned to value what truly matters in life. Her wisdom and kindness made me feel even more grateful for her support. "I know it's not easy dealing with Nancy," she said, referring to my mother-in-law. "But remember, you have a family here that loves you. We'll always stand by you." Her words were a comfort to me. I realized that no matter what, I wasn't alone. I had the love and support of my husband, my grandparents-in-law, and even the hope that one day my relationship with my mother-in-law might improve. As I left her house that day, I felt a renewed sense of strength and optimism. Life wasn't perfect, but with the support of those who cared about me, I knew I could handle whatever came my way.